So just like polynomials, we're going to start with the vocabulary. We had, I think, 13 words in polynomial. We only have 3 in this unit, so it's kind of nice. We're going to look at what is the x called, what is the n called, and what is the whole thing together called. So what do we call the x? What do we call the n? What do we call that whole thing put together? N is the easy one. We did it last unit. What's the little superscript on top of a number? Exponent. What's the number it's attached to? So yes, in this example, it's a variable, but it doesn't always have to be a variable. So if we look underneath, 2 is not a variable, so we have a special name for what the exponent is attached to. Does anyone remember? It's the base. All about that base. What do we call the base and the exponent and what it's equal to? All of that together is called a power. And this unit is all about power. So that's what we're going to be focusing on, is simplifying expressions with exponents. So example, if I gave you 2 to the 3, you know from grade 7 that that means 2 times 2 times 2, so it's repeated multiplication. What is 2 times 2? Times 2. 8. What do we call the 2? In terms of vocabulary, what do we call the 2? He's the base. What do we call the 3? He's the exponent. And the whole equation, 2 to the 3 equals 8, is called the power. That's the 3 words that you need to know. Exponent, base, and power. What's the definition of an exponent? So we looked at this last unit. You guys tell me. The superscript number.
Indicating it's repeated multiples.
Got good memory. A superscript number indicating repeated multiplication. Let's fess up. Who are the lazy people in the room? I have my lazy moments too. Yeah, exponents are for you guys, because we don't want to write out something like this if we look at example 1. We don't want to write out 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 however many times. That's why exponents were invented. What's another way I can write this out using exponents? Well, how many 2's are there? Offer of 6, offer of 7, confirm of 7. So we would write this as 2 to the? We would write this as 2 to the 7. It's just for lazy people, because we don't want to write all that out. How would we write the second one using an exponent? -1 cubed. Would we include the brackets or not include the brackets?
Just kidding, yes.
Yeah, so if they're in the question, they're going to be in the answer. So we would include -1 in brackets, just like the question. And then it's going to be cubed, because there's 3 of them. Scary fractions, a fifth times a fifth times a fifth times a fifth, or 3/5 I should say, times 3/5 times 3/5. Are we going to keep the brackets? Yes, because it's in the question. We're going to keep the 3/5 because that's the base. How many of them are there? 4. That's the first thing you need to be able to do, is take an expression and write it with exponents. Now we're going to go backwards. The second thing you need to be able to do is take an exponent and write the corresponding meaning. So what does 3 to the 6 mean? 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, and when do I stop? When I get 6 of them. You can use the dot for multiplication, you can use an X for multiplication, you can use brackets for multiplication. We typically at this point in your math career, by grade 9, start to get away from using an X for multiplication. Why? Because we get confused. Is it a variable? Is it a multiplication? So we invented this little dot that means the exact same thing. Okay, what does -2 to the 4 mean? Does it mean -2 times 4? No, that'd be too easy. It means -2 times -2 times -2 times -2. Brackets or no brackets? Brackets. So a -2 times a -2 times a -2 times a -2. Why did I not put the dots in that one? Yeah, back-to-back brackets mean multiplication. So you can use brackets, you can use dots. Again, you can use an X, but we're trying to get away from that because sometimes it's confusing. What does negative 5 to the 3 mean? So we really want to look at what's this negative in the letter B as opposed to letter C. Is there brackets in this one? So this one is going to be negative 5 times 5 times 5 times 5. What's the difference between B and C? There's no brackets in C. Oh, cubed. Oh, no, because I can't count. You don't need a math teacher who can count. Correct. Because in this, the brackets applies to the exponent. This is really meaning the opposite of 5 to the 3, if I could spell opposite. And we're going to talk about more about this in a second, is these negatives and when there's brackets and when there's not brackets. First thing you need to be able to do today is take a long expression, simplify it using exponents. The second is taking an expression with exponents and expanding it out to show what it means. Third thing is evaluating exponents, so actually finding the power, what it's equal to. And this is the first time so far this year we've seen the word evaluate. What does it mean? So we have words like solve in math, we have multiply, we have simplify. We saw those last unit. What does evaluate mean? I don't know where it came from, but I heard something. Look over. More than just that, it's a good idea. To evaluate, what does that mean? I heard something but didn't hear where it came from. It means find the numerical value. Find the numerical value. What the heck does that mean? What's a numerical value? Yeah, it's a fancy word for number. What it means that at the end you should have a number. No variables, no polynomials, you should just have a number. Evaluate means what's the number that this is equal to? That's not hashtag, by the way, that's number sign to a mathematician. Okay, so it's a good word to note on the exam. The minute you see evaluate, you know you're giving a number. When you see simplify, like last unit, you're probably giving some kind of polynomial. So there's probably going to be variables in a bunch of terms. Evaluate means find a number. So we want to go further in these questions and not just write out what it's equal to, but actually get to the value. So what does 3 to the power of 2 or 3 squared mean? Again, it doesn't mean 3 times 2. It means 3 times 3. What's 3 times 3 equal to? 9. That's evaluate. What number is this equal to? It's equal to 9. Letter B, 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. So it's not 2 to the 4. It means 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Show me 4 fingers in the air. That's how many times you have to multiply 2. So let's go in order. 2 times 2, 4 times 2, 8 times 2, 16. The numerical value is 16. That's evaluate. Find the number this is equal to.
Wouldn't A be 6?
So what this means is 3 times 3, right? Not 3 times 2, 3 times 3. What does C mean? 4 times 4. What's 4 times 4? 16. 1 to the 5. 5 is a big exponent. I don't know if I like that. What does 1 to the 5 mean? 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1. The minute we see a base of 1, we love it. Why? Because if you multiply 1 no matter how many times, what's it equal to? 1. So I could put 1 to the 200. What would it be equal to? 1. I could put 1 to the 1 million. What's it equal to? 1. Just for fun, because I could. I love living on this side of the desk. 3 to the 3. Again, that doesn't mean 9. It's not 3 times 3. What does 3 to the 3 mean? 3 times 3 times 3. So let's go in order. 3 times 3 times 3, 27. What kind of learner likes to use their hand? That's tactile. Tactile, we like doing it in our hand. 5 squared. Again, not 5 times 2, and that's what your gut's going to want to do because you see a 5 and 2 and you know it's multiplication. You got to get in exponent mode. 5 to the 2 means 5 times 5, which is 25. Turn to someone in front, behind, beside you. Tell them what evaluate means. focus back? Who said bracket hashtag? I was back there somewhere, I heard it. That is not a hashtag in the math world. What does evaluate mean? Find the number. We're looking for a number at the end, not an expression, not a polynomial, not a variable. We're looking for a number. What kind of learner needs to turn and tell their partner things like that? Not tactile. That's auditory. Auditories need to hear and speak, so that's why we do that. Okay, let's talk about these pesky little negatives that we looked about above. And we're going to look specifically at what's the difference between negative 3 squared and negative 3 squared. And listen to me say those again, especially auditory people. Negative 3 squared and negative 3 squared. What do you hear? They sound the same. Sometimes we'll say the following to distinguish, so listen carefully. Negative 3 squared and negative 3 squared. Let me say that again. The first one will say negative 3 squared, and the second one will say negative 3 squared. They're not mathematically. What this means is negative out in front and 3 times 3. Because that exponent only applies to the 3, it's not touching the negative. What does the second one mean? Negative 3 times negative 3. So the first one is negative, and then what is 3 times 3? Negative 9. The second one is where we get into our integer laws, which says negative times negative is positive 9. Do you see the difference between those two? So if there are no brackets for this one, the answer is always going to be negative. If there's no brackets or parentheses, the answer is always going to be negative. So no parentheses, negative. Always. The second case, it depends on the exponent. This one had an exponent of 2 and it ended up being positive. Well, what if it had had an exponent of 3? So that would have been negative times negative times negative. And what happens when you have an odd number of negatives? It's negative. And what happens when you have an even number of negatives? It's positive. So if there are parentheses, there's two choices. If the exponent is even, the number is going to be positive. If there's parentheses and the exponent is odd, it's going to be negative. And let's put that in a highlighter box for the visual peeps. That's the 3 rules for your negatives. If there's no parentheses, it's always going to be negative. If there are parentheses, it just matters if the exponent is even or odd. Because we know even pairs them up so they become positive. Odd, there's always going to be one negative left over. So let's just do some examples with negatives. What's the direction? What does that mean? Find the number. We want to know what is this thing equal to. So negative 4 squared. Well, first we look and say, is there brackets or no brackets or parentheses, no parentheses? No parentheses. So what do we know right away about the answer? It's negative. So I'm going to write that down before I do anything else. No brackets or parentheses, negative. Now I'm just going to do 4 times 4. What's 4 times 4? So when we evaluate this, we get negative 16. B, brackets or no brackets? No brackets, so the answer is going to be negative. 7 to the 1, well, that's just 7 times 1, which is 7. C, brackets or no brackets? Brackets. So now we have a choice. It could be negative or positive. How do we know which one it is? So if there's brackets, how do we know if it's negative or positive? The exponent, odd or even? Odd. What does an odd exponent mean in terms of negatives? It's going to be negative, because what we're going to have is negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1. And when you match up those negatives, there's going to be 1 left over. What is 1 times 1 times 1? Negative 5 squared. Brackets or no brackets? No brackets. No brackets is negative 5 squared, 25. Negative 1 or negative 2 cubed. Brackets or no brackets? Brackets, odd or even exponent? Odd. What does an odd exponent mean if there's brackets? Negative. And then we just need to figure out the number, 2 times 2 times 2. So 2 times 2 times 2, 8. F, brackets or no brackets? Brackets. Now we look at the exponent. Is it even or odd? Even. Does that mean if it's going to be positive or negative? And you don't usually need to write the positive. I'm just going to write it for this one in a different color, so when you look back, we talked about it being positive, but normally we don't have it. How the heck are we going to do 10 to the 4? 10 times 10. 100 times 10. 1,000 times 10. 10,000. What's the trick when you're doing tens? Yeah, 10 to the 1 has how many zeros? 1. And 10 to the 2 has 2 zeros. 10 to the 3 has 3 zeros. So 10 to the 4 is going to have 4 zeros. So it's going to be a 1 with 4 zeros. Turn and talk to your partner and explain to them why F is positive. And that's just training your brain. That's a very common mistake is 10 times 4. It's training your brain. Little guy's exponent. And that's just training your brain, training your brain. So grab your scientific calculator. Mine's a graphing, which doesn't matter. If you need to still go buy one tonight would be the time. Remember, if you're getting a scientific calculator, you should not pay more than $10. You can get them at Walmart, at Staples, at Superstore, any place that sells calculators. I don't know if Dollarama has scientific. I haven't checked lately. Scientific, are you looking for these kinds of buttons, like this sine, cos, tan stuff, and a whole bunch of extra buttons? So if you have it, great. If you have an app on your phone, great. Open it. Usually you have to turn it sideways to go from regular to scientific. Every calculator is different. So the problem is, I'll wait, Yab, since you're yakking away, not listening to me. The problem is if you're going to borrow a friend's calculator the day of the test, because you know you can't use the calculator on your cell phone when we have a test or a quiz, I am not going to show you that day how to use that calculator. So you need to get a calculator that you know how to use, because everyone has a different button and is programmed a different way. So if you're going to borrow a friend's, make sure you ask them how to do exponents on it before you come in here. You have a couple of choices, and I don't want you to write these down yet until you found the one that's on your calculator. You might have what's called a caret, which we also sometimes call a hat key. You might have a key that looks like y to the x. You might have a key that's x to the y. Okay, so look right now and see if you have any one of those three. Y to the x is the most popular, caret's the second popular. Whichever you have right in the box. If you can't find it, then come show me and I'll find it for you. But whichever of these you have right in the box so you know later. If you can't find it, let me know and I will find it for you. Remember, you can't use a device that can transmit messages during a quiz or a test, so make sure you have a regular, plain old calculator. Come. You have an X with a box. Do you see that one there? I'll add that to the list. You have a Y to the X right there. X box was one that we had there. Nope. X to the N. Could be X to the N. You have the caret right there. Off on the side. Yep. There, look at that. Just in this room with 20 people, we have 5 different ways to do it already on the calculator. So whichever you have, you write in the box. So when you look back, you know what key we pressed. Typically, the way it works is you hit the base first. So for the first example, we're going to hit the 6. Then you're going to hit whatever key you have. I have a caret key. You could have y to the x. You could have x to the box. You could have x to the n. then you're going to do the exponent. So it's typically base, exponent key, exponent, hit enter. You should all have the same number, which is 1296.
Wait, how did you?
I did the base first, then that exponent key, then the 4, then enter.
I have 1296.
1296.
Mine's got all these like dots behind it.
That just means that you're set it into scientific notation mode.
How do I take it off?
I have no idea. I've never seen your calculator before. Is there a reset button on the back sometimes? Yeah, a little hole you usually stick something in. Did anybody not get that? Then come show me and I can just see what you're doing wrong.
No, there isn't.
Okay, so just jot down the note. We typically type in the base. Then whatever your exponent key is, so I'm going to draw a caret, you're going to draw whatever your key is, whether it's y to the x to the y, x to the box, x to the n. And then we type in the exponent. And then typically equals or enter or however you get the final answer on that calculator. Again, I will not show you during the test how to work a calculator. That's not my job. Your job is to figure that out before. So if you're going to borrow a calculator, make sure you know how to use it before you come in here. Okay, and we should have all got 1296 for this one. How do we do with the pesky brackets? We're going to do exactly what we see. Now, it depends on your calculator, but you might have what's called a plus-minus key. You might have a minus in brackets. It's probably not the subtraction key, because typically calculators see a negative and a subtraction as different functions. So you might type that first, you might type that after. So you might have to do the 12 then the negative key, you might have to do the negative then the 12 key. It just depends. Mine is the negative and then the 12. Then I'm doing my exponent key, which I have the caret. And then I'm doing exponent of 5. You should have negative 248,832. Again, if you didn't get that, talk to someone around you or come show me. So it might be 12 negative, it might be negative 12. It just depends on the order of your calculator. Bless you. If you didn't get it, come show me or ask someone sitting around you. How did we know that was going to be negative without even using the calculator? The negative and no brackets, right? So we knew right away. Again, so you might have to put negative 12, you might have to put 12 negative, it just depends on your calculator. What do we do when there's brackets? Well, we're going to put brackets in. So typically we're opening a bracket. Whoa, whoaing. Now again, you either put negative 4 or 4 negative, just depending on what you did last time. Mine's going to be negative 4. Then I'm going to close that bracket. Okay, so everyone should have opened. Your choice whether it's 4 negative, negative 4. Close the bracket. Then whatever your exponent key is, and the exponent of 6. You don't see what, sorry?
Brackets just don't like show up, it just shows up.
The calculator knows they're there. That's why we use graphing as opposed to scientific in grade 10, because this is so much easier to read. So if you did it correct, you should have 4,096. Okay, if not, ask someone around you, come show me. Okay, so most people are going to open a bracket first, then negative 4 or 4 negative, then close the bracket, then your exponent key, then the exponent of 6. And then close the bracket.